Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Sorry, I was just distracted doing something else. Kia ora, Chewy.
Good evening, Pat.
I'm going through my Twitter feed because I've been talking about what we're going to talk about tonight all through the weekend. I'm like, oh shit, there's another tweet we should talk about. There's another tweet we should talk about. There's another tweet we should talk about. So I was a bit distracted. I won't just, the tonight's show won't just be watching Pat's Twitter feed, but hopefully I've opened some things that'll remind me of some things to talk about tonight. Kia ora, Kaz. How are you, man? How's your weekend?
I had a pretty good weekend, actually. Beautiful weather for the most part down here, which is great. Not what the North Island got, of course, but we will take it.
Yeah. Big show tonight. Yeah, I had a busy week. I was quite organised this weekend. I did quite a lot of work at the end of last week, and I had a fair bit of downtime this weekend, which is very unusual for me, seeing I kind of do this basically 7 days a week. Lots of clips and stuff put out on Thursday and Friday, so I didn't have to do them over the weekend, and a lot of Twitter action. Speaking of Twitter action, I've already put a tweet out today. Hopefully some of you will have seen it. We're going to be talking to the director of ASH, Against Smoking for Health, it used to be called, I think. And now it's basically ASH 2025. And they're doing that because they were part of the drive for a smoke-free New Zealand in 2025. Now, a big part of tonight's show is going to be looking at the hypocrisy coming out of the weekend. But he said one thing, which will come up in the pre-recorded interview. It is already on my Twitter feed. He said this. So speaking of the poor, the addicted, and Māori in particular, because obviously overrepresented in the smoking facts, he said this, that this current government now sees them, quote, as an expendable source of revenue. An expendable source of revenue. Because, of course, smoking, cancer, death, they are expendable. And it was one of those moments, Chewy, where I kind of was like, afterwards I realized what a fucking statement that was as I was editing it rather than in the moment. So that's why I tweeted it out. So it's just made me think as well. We've been talking a lot about, if National had been in charge during COVID, you kind of can't argue now that it's profits over people. Like, you just can't. So if we get like a big spike of COVID or something else happens that requires a government to put people ahead of profits, we are fucked. Because that's what the last government did. And all those boomers that they kept alive when and voted them out and all those businesses that they helped save with the subsidies and stuff voted them out. And now I've got a group in that are going to pay for their tax cuts by letting more people smoke. And obviously smoking stats impact Māori, youth, and the poor worst of all. So yes, here we go, guys. They won. They fucking won.
Let's be fair, Pat. Could anybody have predicted this?
No. Who saw this?
No.
Who saw this?
No one saw this coming. Fuck me. It's just so dreadful. It's like for all the spitballing of like, well, they're not going to get their foreign buyers tax over the line, so how are they going to fund these tax cuts? And we're thinking of austerity and massive job losses just before Christmas. Who knew that they would come swooping in on the side of big tobacco and literally winding back the clock 10-15 years of decades and decades of work over multiple governments to get New Zealand smoking rates down. To say, like, I saw the facts, and I'd love to dig in and see if this is true, right? So they needed to find, say $1 billion for their to fund their tax cuts. The projected costs of rolling back these anti-smoking measures for the public health sector is like $1.3 billion.
They said the revenue that comes in at the moment is 1.7 billion from smoking. That's what they say it is at the moment.
Yeah.
So, but it's also on a downward trend because smoking is going away. The funniest thing in all of this, and we're going to play some, is fucking Nicola. Look, let me say this real from the outset, and I probably will say this again when we play it. She is the most cowardly politician I've ever seen, because refuses to answer the question, do you accept that this will end up with more people dying? Won't answer that question. Says, I have to speak to my people about that. I haven't seen the research, right? Just at least own it. Like, at least own it. At least go, we need the money, and yes, more people are going to die. I would have far more respect for someone who did that. Even if you try and wrap it up in some bullshit right-wing freedom, they've got the right to smoke and die, yada, yada, yada. People who say that have never had an addiction. And I'm speaking from someone who's had and has addiction issues. They just, if they want to, they can, yada, yada, yada. It's just fascinating.
You got to think of the positives, though, right? Nicknames and memes. Shane Cigaretti, Nicotine Willis, just absolute gold standard. Absolutely gold standard.
Well, let's do this. Speaking of memes, I saw this one as well on Dr. Rawiri Taunui's. He's had a lot today, actually, on his Twitter feed. I like this one in particular. Check this out. How can you have a waka on the road? Peter slams Te Reo Māori names on the same picture. How can you have a zebra crossing? How can you have a boat with horsepower? How can a Jaguar be a car? How can we communicate on a web? Yeah, language. It's language.
I saw glorious leader, luxury man, saying that he thinks that most people find Māori names for government departments confusing. So that's what he thinks of people, that they're utterly incapable of using context clues or learning.
Yeah.
Like, how do we know what a Kiwi is?
Yeah.
It's unknowable.
You're driving through Ngāru Wahia. How do you know where you are?
What even is a waka?
Yeah.
Doesn't say canoe. A strong English word, that. Canoe.
You're pulling up to pick up your kid at about 3:05 in the afternoon at that big school with a playground and all the 8-year-olds running around, and it says Kuta out the front, and you're like, oh fuck, I need to be at the school. What's my kid doing here? What's going on? It's impossible. Possible cues to figure out.
It's just so backwards. I like it's and there's people cheering it on, of course, and I'm disappointed at them as well. Like I've been like, it's just hypocrisy. It's going to take years and years and years to unwind the damage that these guys are clearly going to do.
So we've kind of started the conversation. So let's pause for a sec. We're going to get into it like straight away. But let's first of all just say, guys and gals and anything else's, our last merch drop for the year is here. Now, forgive my mental deficiency today, but I spoke to the printer and I forgot to tell him we need images of hoodies and t-shirts. So tomorrow the hoodies will be imaged here, but at the moment it's just the t-shirts. So for the last week, and I'm sort of making a pledge that if you make your order this week, you will get it before Christmas. We sort of are thinking about maybe doing this for 2 weeks, which we normally do, but my concern for next week is you may not get it before Christmas. I can't control once it leaves the depot in Dunedin, right? Sometimes takes several days. Especially there'll be lots of mail going around at the moment as well. But this week, I'm pretty confident, I can almost guarantee you'll have it before Christmas. So the merch this week, this is Chewy's favorite one, isn't it, Chewy?
It's my clear. We were arguing about this before we went to air, actually. I think this t-shirt goes fucking hard. And Pat's like, no, I don't know.
No, I don't know. But remember, it's in a hoodie as well. You can buy the hoodie tonight if you want. You just can't see the picture. Or you can wait till tomorrow and the picture will be up as soon as they come through. So the first t-shirt is the #1 podcast in Swaziland. And that's available in black and white. Black and white. And then BHN
Best
on the
t-shirt.
back. The next one is fairly a festive one. How about have yourself a very beardy Christmas? Only in red, because it's the most festive. Only in red. Have yourself a very beardy Christmas. So if you want to kind of be with us around the Christmas period on Christmas Day, come and have a beardy Christmas with us. That one's available as well. And that will also be available in the hoodie up here, but I have to get the picture. And the last one is probably the socially awkward. What's the right word? Social commentary one, which is for those with power, equality feels like oppression. For those with power, equality feels like oppression. And that's in purple and that's in tan. Oh, there's the tan one there. And I've put the Like people see that look more yellow than tan. We've done a tan t-shirt before, but not with that logo. So it's unique to this thing. There's the tan t-shirt and there's the purple, very purple t-shirts, just so you know. So for those in power or those with power, equality feels like oppression. One other thing to tell you about, our BHN gear, our regular t-shirts and hoodies. This is the last chance for you to get these limited edition special hoodies and stuff. If you're just new to what we're doing, the OB on the back is like I grew up in the 90s listening to gangster rap and hip hop and R&B, and people talk about OGs, original gangsters, like the originals who did it all. Well, you can be an OB, which is an original beardy. Now, come the next time we do a merch drop, which at the earliest will be January, there will be no OBs on the back of these hoodies. It's only for people who purchase in 2023 will be able to use that in years to come to say, I was there from the start. I'm an OB. So that's on both the hoodie and on the t-shirt as well, as you can see. OB, that's the back, that's the front. The front's got the BHN, the back's got the OB in the corner. And after this week, there'll be BHN merch, but the original Beardies limited edition first year of selling merch will never be back again. So, of course, all you need to do is go to bhnshop.nz, bhnshop.nz. As I said, there'll be images there tomorrow for the hoodies, but you can see them anyway. There's the red hoodie there. You know, you can look at that. It's there's the purple hoodie there, but so it'll look like that with text on the front of it. So go hard, people. Big week for you to guys do this. I'm still thinking about not doing one next week, just because I really want people to have them before Christmas who want them. So just get in this week, do your stuff, bhnshop.nz. All right, Chewy, anything else before we rip in?
No, let's get into this.
Let's fucking go, bro. Let's talk about Nicola Willis, eh? Nicola Willis. Now there's this is actually not necessarily about Nicola Willis, but it's about the National Party and them cancelling Smokefree 2025. So this all started sort of on Saturday morning when she was talking to News Hub, and as a part of her conversation with News Hub, they kind of figured out in real time that people continuing to smoke is going to fund the tax cuts. Now, I don't think my opinion is she was really ready for this question, because she doesn't admit to this when she talked on Q&A the next morning. So obviously, even though this is a reality, this was the first time she'd thought about this, in my opinion. And so she basically admits to it and then won't admit to it at any other media opportunities. Here's the OG. Here's the OG interview for her to admit exactly what their plan is.
But are you saying that the tax on smokers is going to fund the tax cuts? Is that what I just heard?
What you saw in the pre-election fiscal update was that Treasury assessed that the effect of drastically reducing the number of shops that could sell tobacco products, denicotizing those products and introducing a range of restrictions would significantly reduce revenue to the Crown.
Right.
So we'll be asking for updates on what impact that will have, because both New Zealand First and the ACT Party were insistent that they wanted those regulations reversed, and we've agreed to that in these coalition agreements.
Okay, so smokers will fund the tax cuts because New Zealand First and ACT want the smokers to have access to cigarettes. Okay.
Then he moves on. So it's pretty clear. And let me say this. Listen very carefully. She distanced herself from it. And another clip I'm going to play within the next 10 minutes, Luxon distanced himself from it. She said because ACT and New Zealand First want it, and he says later on because ACT and New Zealand First want it. I will just remind us always of that beautiful thing that Bomber said when he was on and talking about David Seymour. If you open the door, then you are responsible for anything that breaks. I'm sorry, in coalition government, you don't get to palm this off Nicola Willis or Christopher Seymour. This is all on you. You don't get to step away from it and go, no, we don't have anything to do with this. Oh, but we have to. This is all on you as much as it is on the other two that you want to seem to lay it off from. We go into Q&A, right? And I'm just going to keep going, Chewy, because it's sort of all one big thing. We can stop in between as we're going. But we go to Q&A now, where she's talking to Jack Tame. And Jack Tame just sets it up, talking about, again, more New Zealanders will die from smoking, from the smoking law changes.
Scrapping the smoke-free changes will bring in more taxes because more people will be smoking. do you accept it will also mean more people will die?
Well, I just want to take you back a step, because the logic for the smoke-free changes is not about tax revenue. The logic from both ACT and New Zealand First, when they came to the negotiating table,
Do you hear that? ACT and New Zealand First. Distance,
Mhm.
distance.
was their concern that changes planned for the future to those laws would have a couple of nasty side effects.
Interesting words. The changes to the law are going to have nasty side effects. I wonder if she realizes getting cancer has some nasty side effects as well. But more importantly, ACT, New Zealand First, think that changes to the law will have some nasty side effects. What are those nasty side effects, Minister Willis?
One, they were concerned about the emergence of a big black market for tobacco, unregulated, untaxed. Second, they were concerned that by vastly reducing the number of retail outlets to around 600, that we could see a huge increase in retail crime, ram raids, people being put in danger. So their concern.
Yes, Joey, I heard you breathe. Sir, what would you like to offer? So we're not finished yet, but what would you like to offer?
So they think the restrictions on a product, a drug, if you will,
People want to use and use themselves.
Yeah, would cause an untaxed black market.
I know, don't want that.
And so their solution is to loosen restrictions.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to approach that. I wonder if there's any parallels with any other products.
Yeah, because I don't know too much about this, but I understand there's like a really big black market at the moment around, what's that stuff called? Oh, cannabis. So if they're going to be consistent, and what you'll see in tonight's show is on day one, the huge inconsistency we're seeing so far. If they're truly wanting to stop a black market, then, okay, folks, it's time to put together a referendum to legal cannabis, because there might be some, I don't know, what do you call it? Nasty side effects from having cannabis criminalized, Chewy.
So just expanding on that thought a little bit.
Sure.
Because we're big thinkers here. If they did take a product that was heavily restricted and say to the point of illegality, legalized it, and were then able to, I don't know, maybe tax it, would that open up some revenue streams?
I believe there was
has obviously fucked up their numbers so bad that they're pulling this out of their ass.
I believe that the last time we talked about cannabis reform and decriminalizing it, the number $500 million a year was mentioned as tax take and not to mention the health benefits and the regulations that would apply to people having to sell legal cannabis. Yeah.
So they'd make more money. They'd save money from freeing up police resources and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they'd also punish the gangs. And isn't National the party of numbers and tough on crime?
Yes.
Interesting.
Oh, so what you're saying, I'm a bit dim. You're saying
massive unrelated, absolutely unrelated to what we're talking about here. It's fine.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is that would harm people committing crimes by taking resource away from them and give them income, which would help their numbers. But that can't surely. There must be something wrong here, because surely they'd see that. And if they'd see that,
I'm a big stupid fuckhead. so I must have got it wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
Like Nicola Willis has his lovely hair done on a Sunday, and is I assume the Minister of Finance or something. Yeah. Like surely not big old hamhead here with a fucking idea or two. No.
And we've been watching her for 90 seconds, and she still hasn't answered the question yet of more people dying. So maybe we'll just see if she ever gets to that.
Concerns were around the regulation. I'd invite you, I think you've got David on the show later, to talk more about where they're coming from on.
Yeah, please talk to David, because it's nothing to do with us.
That. And what we've agreed in the coalition agreements is not to proceed with the further changes that the government was planning.
That doesn't go to my question.
You're the government.
You accept that scrapping those changes will mean more people will die.
Well, I have not seen advice or analysis of that, so I'm not prepared to give you an answer.
They studied.
I have not seen advice or analysis to that, so I'm not prepared to answer that question. So let's just spell this out. Let's just spell this out. If Smoking now continues for the next 100 years legally rather than the next 3. Will the people smoking beyond that 3-year time period, some of them die from smoking? Now, let me just put it this way. Chewy, if tomorrow the number of cars on our road went up by 100%, in one night, the number of cars doubled on our roads, I don't think I would need to seek advice to answer the question, do you think there'll be more deaths on the road from a car accident? I think it would be fairly fair to say, yeah, obviously, if you double the number of cars, more people are going to die. It doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. I'm not saying that for the car example, but the reality is more people are going to die. Someone on Twitter this weekend said to me, had a bit of a crack, you'll be surprised, Joey, about, well, that's what they do. They have to go to their, to the analyst and talk it all out. And I'm like, if she truly does need to get advice on more people smoking, will that lead to more people dying from smoking? Then we are more fucked than we thought. Unless, of course, Chewy, she's lying and being a coward, running away.
It's unknowable, Pat. And look, I certainly don't want our listeners, because I've seen a couple of comments in the chat, and I just want to just really get people to pump the brakes on that. I don't think it's reasonable to draw parallels between the fact that Chris Bishop was a former tobacco industry lobbyist.
Yeah,
I think that's unfair because he's not on this program. It's Nicola Willis. They look very different. And I certainly don't want you to draw any parallels to the amount of funding that the Taxpayers Union got from Big Tobacco as well. That would be very, very unfair. And certainly please forget that Christopher Bishop's dad set up the Taxpayers Union, because that's unrelated.
And also what's unrelated, the other thing is the dairy as in the dairy on the corner of the road, the dairy industry putting money in as well and giving them big chunks of money and support to the right. So the guys that are going to be able to continue to sell these and make money off them, that's a complete coincidence. That's got nothing to do with it either. Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah. And you bring up the fact that they're quite willing to beef up the death count and the impact that it'll have on public health and that sort of thing. And for, again, I see a couple of comments in the chat, people that have been smoking for 40 years and they're fine. Good for you. I'm certainly glad that you haven't had to watch a relative die of emphysema.
No, but it wouldn't have impacted them. They could have kept on smoking the whole time. It was going to be a gradual. So cool, go for it.
I think the point that person was trying to make was that because they are fine, that there are no negative health effects for tobacco.
As we've said on this show, this
should have been a t-shirt. Size of one.
Yeah, this should have been a t-shirt.
Unimpeachable.
We should have said this. This should have been a t-shirt. Quite simply, your anecdotal evidence, sir or madam or other, is not necessarily representative of the data. And just because for 40 years you've been fine, let's say you're one of these people that would have lived to 100. Maybe you'll live to 85. Maybe it'll knock that 10 years off. For lots of people who would have lived to 70, maybe they'll live till 60. For other people that would have lived to 80, and I tell you, when people say, well, those are the bad years, you speak to like my mum passed when she was about 77. She would have given anything to have 2, 3, 4, 5 more years with her grandkids. She didn't get to see any of her grandkids get married. Oh, no, one. Sorry, I'm wrong. One kid of her grandkids get married. She didn't see the grandkids graduating from university. And so, it's easy to say, last 3 years are bad. But when you're in that moment in your mid-70s, early 80s, whatever, most people would give anything for another few years. Most would. And so, more power to you if you want to die 5 or 10 years earlier than you would have. But most people aren't in that camp. Most people are regretful when they get to that stage of their life because they realize that they've shortchanged themselves because of things like smoking. It's as simple as that.
But Pat, can't we exchange people that have made a bad choice for a small weekly pay cut for landlords? A tax break for landlords. I mean the squeezed middle, low income earners. That's who it's for, right?
Absolutely for it. Let's get to the end of Nicola Willis and her arguments and conversations back with Jack Tame.
Studied the potential changes before they were introduced, did modelling around the numbers. At the moment, 5,000 people a year die from smoking-related disease in New Zealand.
But they're all Labour voters, so I don't care.
And the number...
I joke, obviously.
numbers released before these changes were introduced suggested that they would save about 8,000 lives by the year 2040.
8,000.
Well, there is an ongoing commitment from this government to reduce the number of people smoking, to stop people smoking in the first place, to reduce the harm from smoking, to support people to quit. And you will see that in the way that Dr. Shane Reti goes about his health leadership.
Dr. Shane Reti has been thrown a hospital pass. I wonder if he knew this before he said yes. He is a former Northland GP. Northland has a very high population of Māori citizens. Māori are one of the worst hit with this smoking issue. He is on record, I put it on my Twitter feed over the weekend, go look at it, for saying how this will help Māori and the youth, people under 30, this legislation. And now his partners, his government, who he's in charge of, like who are in charge of the country, I reckon have thrown him a hospital pass. And one of the reasons I think you know that is no one's heard from him. I requested an interview with him. Of course, they're not going to come talk to us. But what can he say? The question to Dr. Reti is going to be, is more people smoking a good thing for the health of New Zealand? He's a doctor, a former Northland GP. Of course, he has to say no, but he can't say no because that would make his party look foolish. So he'll just say nothing, Chewy.
Maybe he's one of those doctors from Mad Men that's just like, yeah, cigarettes are cool and they have massive health benefits and don't look into it because look at how cool I am. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, God, I remember I was in high school when the first big push against anti-smoking and that sort of thing. And all of this has worked. It's fucking industry leading. When I traveled, I was blown away by how much people in Europe smoke.
Yeah.
Like it's so marked when you come back here that people don't smoke and then they don't smoke in as many places. You know, when we took the cigarettes out of bars and venues and that sort of thing. Oh my God, it was so good. And that prompted people to not smoke in their own homes. They go outside to smoke because of course it's fucking shit. There's all of these people in the chat that smoke and there's like one person that is kind of like, yeah, it's pretty good. Everybody else is like, I've been smoking for 40 years and I hate it. I don't want to see anybody else start smoking as young as I did. I wish I could quit. I have relatives dying in their 50s because they smoked. Like if you said, hey, we'll give you $10 a fortnight out of your taxes, but you get to pick a relative who dies of lung cancer. No one's going to take that bet.
Yeah.
No one's going to. It's a shit deal. It's a shit trade. These guys are fucking dreaming.
All right, let's get to the end of Nicola before we go on to Mr. Luxon. See, Lux.
Is it really the end
one of the
Nicola?
things that has dropped smoking rates significantly in recent years is that people have chosen to take up vaping instead, which obviously I don't want my 13-year-old taking up vaping, so be very clear about that. But equally, for people who were using a much more harmful product, that has helped them with
Do you have
stopping
any
smoking.
moral reservations about these changes?
Well, I would be really worried if we were going backwards from where the law currently is. And as you know, the law currently restricts access for minors. It makes smokes very expensive so that they are hard to obtain. There are significant health warnings in shops. Access to those products is pretty restricted.
But these next steps were world leading.
Well, they haven't been done before, and therefore there is no proof or evidence that they would have had the effects that were promised.
That's what
So no
leading
moral
is, Nicola.
Well, as I've said to you, morally, I want fewer people smoking.
Okay.
And I think that we need to keep that goal in mind.
We're not going to do that, though.
There's another talking point talking point for you, and you'll hear Luxon do it. You can see how in the mornings they get their email talking points, right? The other talking point that comes out, and you will hear Luxon say it, is, well, it wasn't instigated. This new law hadn't been put in place yet, so we really don't know what it would have done. So you can't really criticize us, is what they're saying, because, you know, maybe it would have been better, maybe not, but it wasn't instigated, so we really don't know. That's another one of the lines they're going to be putting out. And as I said, I'm not sure if it's in the clip that I'm going to show of Luxon, but in that interview on AM this morning, he definitely said the same thing. We're going to move into that shortly, Troy, but what do you want to catch up on before we do?
I just want to jump on one thing that she said there. But this would be world leading. And she pivots something as important as New Zealand leading the way. and trying something that something hasn't done to like, oh, but it hasn't been tried, so we're not going to do it. It's like that's their idea for New Zealand in a nutshell, isn't it? We're too small. We can't try something. Let somebody else go first. It's so small. It's so small-minded.
I'm just happy right now because I'm looking at my email and Kiwi Skirt has just bought a beardy Christmas t-shirt. That makes me most happy of the whole night. Someone's going to be wearing it. Have yourself a very beardy little Christmas. All right, let's go on to our hairless leader. Something that's very funny that you might catch up on later on. I'm not going to dwell on it, but when he gets sworn in, he promises an allegiance to the king and all its heirs. And I just thought, Freudian slip rather than heirs. And I just thought maybe
it's got an H in it.
Yeah, but it's no. But I'm more thinking about maybe there's something he's
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I know. But he sees an H, he pronounces it as an H, Pat.
All right, here we go. So this is the same conversation, right? And it's on the AM show, as you can see, talking about the morale. It's interesting, actually, the morality of it. They're both being asked that question as well.
All right. Hey, but some of the nitty-gritty around this, you're cutting back on smoke-free legislation. In fact, you're axing smoke-free legislation in order to pay for tax cuts. How do you feel about that personally? You know, as somebody who's always been quite a moral person, that under your government, a young person could become addicted to a deadly smoking, might have a deadly smoking addiction, and they wouldn't otherwise have had that if Labor was in power. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I wouldn't characterise it that way. Just got to remember, before the election, the government passed a bunch of changes to smoking legislation. So none of it's been implemented as such.
None of it's been implemented.
And, some of it, to be honest, we're quite.
None of it's been implemented. So you can't hold us accountable because it's not there at the moment. Talking point, as I just said.
Concerned about. I mean, the reality that only a couple, the limited distribution actually means that you create an effect where, there's an increased level of ram raids or a bigger black market emerges that's largely untaxed. The idea that actually a 36-year-old can smoke but a 35-year-old can't, with the age generational changes that were going to be made.
So in that point, Chewy, isn't it kind of strange how at the moment an 18-year-old can vote but a 17-year-old can't? So this is the hypocrisy. Following this logic, they must therefore now want to lower the voting age. And there'll be a ton of different things. An 18-year-old can drink and a 17-year-old can't. A 65-year-old can get the pension and a 64-year-old can't. So, it's not fair. It doesn't work that way. And this is the hypocrisy and the unintelligent arguments they're putting forward. Unfortunately, because, and look, I mean, being empathetic and gracious to the major networks, they don't have all the time in the world to delve into it like a piss pot little podcast. They do have to get to the next ad breaks. That's how they run. But no pushback from anyone on these things, because that makes perfectly logical sense. Much like the cannabis question, if you don't want a black market around cigarettes, and look, I have evidence that you won't get a black market, and that's called BZP party pills, because all the same arguments came up when they were going to cancel BZP party pills. And guess what? They cancelled BZP party pills and they disappeared. Of course, there's always going to be the odd person who wants to break the rules or internationally import or get them from a gang. But the question is someone who smokes going to want to then put themselves in a position of committing a criminal act to go to a tinny house and get some tobacco? And the chances are, okay, a percentage will, but I would suggest that a vast majority of people wouldn't. So when they say black market, they're probably right, but a black market would service a fraction of the number of people who are currently smoking. And that's why it's such a bullshit argument. But taking them on their word, if we're worried about black markets, let's legislate cannabis. If we're worried about there being discrimination between two different ages, let's drop the voting age. You can go on and on and on. It's just hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. The argument is so thin, and as of yet, no one's really calling it out, Joey.
I just want to say this now because I think if I try and hold it, I will forget it. This is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but you mentioned the voting age. One of the things that National has mentioned is that they want to increase the parliamentary term to 4 years, right?
Yep.
Now, I saw someone point out something that I hadn't considered, right? Because generally I'm a supporter of the 4-year parliamentary term. And because of that, I hate that National have brought it up. if they do that and don't lower the voting age, there's going to be a cohort of people that can't vote until they're like 20, 21.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
So
true. So,
it'd be even more disenfranchised. And remember, they say that the people are more likely to continue voting if they vote, young, that they start voting young.
that would
So
be a
of
pretty
course
good.
they're not going to want that.
No, but that'll be a pretty good from the opposition to be able to say, because the opposition are going to support a 4-year term, but for them to say on the basis of, I mean, like, okay, so let's meet the middle ground. Let's not go to 16. Let's go to 17. Let's find a compromise. Make it 17, not make it 16, and go from there. So no, I think that's a really interesting point. Right, let's keep going with our hairless leader.
All of that just sort of, was certainly for ACT and for New Zealand First were issues where they said, look, hey, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And some of it we didn't support either in international.
See, again, there's the other talking point. Let's push it on to ACT and New Zealand First. So ACT and New Zealand First being pushed aside was an instigator. So what do we know? And then black market. These are talking points that they're both locked into from their PR people.
So you want to make sure
the reality
everyone,
is,
no matter what their age, everyone has the chance to smoke.
Well, no, what we want to say is we want to continue to see smoking coming down, and it
right.
has been coming down tremendously under successive governments. We'll continue that pathway. Good education. We'll continue to encourage people. Vaping's taken a lot of that smoking drive away, which has been fantastic. We want to make sure that vapes aren't sold to under 18s, and we'll have stronger penalties in that space. But, the reality is we'll continue to drive, and encourage people not to smoke. But the changes that the government were making, we think, have some unintended consequences that aren't actually helpful. And it wasn't actually a drive to fund our tax plan. That's a byproduct of that. But what I just say to you is, the reality is those actions were things that the government proposed in legislation before the election haven't been implemented. Not sure what the impacts of those would actually be. And the result is, when you've actually limited distribution and you're the only place selling smokes in some towns in New Zealand, you're a massive target for crime and for ram raids. There will be a big expanded black market that will be largely untaxed. And then also, I don't think the age thing kind of works in my view. So that was our aversion to that.
The age thing doesn't work.
Okay. Couldn't you make the same argument for cannabis? I mean, you're talking about you not wanting to have a black market, wanting to be able to tax the externality. Why don't you do a similar thing with cannabis?
Yeah, different story, different effects. But I mean, the reality here is we've got a tool.
Different story, different effects. Now, I'm surprised he didn't say, let me be clear to you first, because he normally says that right before he says something that's utter gobbledygook. Different story, different effects. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, okay. Let's just move on.
And vapes, which has actually helped a lot of people come off smokes, which has been good. Now we've got to make sure that we protect young people in particular and their access to vaping, and that's important. We've got tougher consequences there. We'll continue to drive smoking down, as successive governments have done through good education. But just saying that the government's ideas were actually the great ideas that are going to take the whole thing forward, we just disagree with that.
There you go. So you heard those same talking points, and those
shit show.
And those talking points are utter nonsense. Got some super chats to get to, True, but first of all, do you got anything you want to add in?
I want to give credit, because I don't often give credit to Ryan Bridge there. Absolutely devastating turn of phrase there about you want to see people of any age able to smoke.
It's a good one, eh?
Just brilliant.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. Sorry, go.
I was also trying to find a photo of Chris Bishop smoking, because I'm sure there is. I couldn't actually find one on the internet, but I tell you what I did find. Are you ready, Pat?
I'm ready. Sorry, I'm just texting my daughter at the same time. Oh, fantastic!
Look at that.
Yeah, with the Westie waterfall going down the back.
Yeah, pie in one hand and a pack of cigarettes crunched up in the other one. You can't see that; it's just out of frame.
We're going to not play Ben, your Ben from Ash tonight, or else we will be here till 11 p.m. So, but what we'll do is we'll play that first thing tomorrow. And if you are a patron, a paid up patron, you can go and watch the whole interview now. It's already on the Patreon site. And if not, it'll be the first thing off the ranks tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock. I mean, it'll still be as valid tomorrow because it's him with his views and opinions on what this legislation is going to do. But just purely because of the time we've got, we will do that tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Right, let's have a look at some of the super chats from Peter, $5. Thank you very much. Oddly, the Tories in the UK are taking up the smoke-free generation policy, while our government are trading lives for money. This is the thing, eh? Like I honestly, and I thought about this over the weekend, and the word coward and cowardly keeps coming to mind. Like, own it, fuckers, own it. Yes, more people are going to die. Yes. If we raise the speeding limit by 10 kilometers an hour, more people are going to die. Own it. It's a decision you're making, right? The other government would say fewer people are going to die. You can say, yes, more people are going to die, but we need to give tax cuts to people who really need it and reimbursements back to landlords. Just at least own it. Like, honestly, it just pisses me off so much that they think they don't have to. You know, you open that door, anything that breaks, you own. Anything. Rodney Wilkie says, love your work. This coalition are just ghouls. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Absolutely. There. Appreciate that. Is it Mary Beth Morano Cavett? Just with a $10 super chat. Appreciate that, Mary Beth. Thank you very much. If you're going to do a super chat, because unless it's, for example, racist or illegal or misogynistic or something that we just wouldn't put up anyway, all super chats get mentioned. So if you ever want to say anything, make sure you mention it in your super chat as well. Nicola, look, Jack, we weren't able to kill vulnerable New Zealanders during COVID because we weren't in power. So we're doing the best we can. Okay. Yeah. Like I've already said it once tonight, but could you imagine if these ghouls were in charge during COVID? I mean, Simon Bridges did his best to try and get the borders opening as quickly as possible. They tried to put profits over people. That, you know, maybe that's a t-shirt. Profits over National 2023, profits over people. Maybe that's something that we've got to say.
It's public record as well. You can go back and you can have a look at the statements that Chris Bishop made as their COVID response spokesperson and see what they were pulling for. They were pulling for businesses to stay open. They were pulling for the borders to stay open. They were once they were closed, they were wanting people back sooner, open sooner. Like, it scares me that they're in control now, because if we're seeing this level of ham-fisted ghoulishness now, what happens when they get up ahead of steam?
Yep.
You know, there's
day
only,
one.
like, every time they bring up this whole thing of like, oh, it's something that ACT and New Zealand First wanted. No, you don't get it. You're the government. All three of you are the government. So that's it. It's on you, Nicola. If you're the Minister of Finance and you've decided this because finance is the tax cuts, then the government decided to do this. You are the government now.
Another super chat there from Tiki. Don't you think Prime Minister Chris Luxon looks like Robert Muldoon's love child? Yeah, there's some similarities there. And I guess, mind you, Muldoon, they say jokingly, Muldoon was New Zealand's last socialist Prime Minister. So maybe a very different approach to life. Maybe
that hurts me every time I hear it. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, fuck, it's true.
Let's just have a look at a couple of the conversations going on over the weekend on Twitter. So based on what we said just now, right? Now, a lot of people are coming out from the right saying things of, what business is it of anyone's if someone wants to smoke? Time to get past social engineering. Smokers provide $1.7 billion to their tax take. It's a personal choice. Such a difficult concept to grasp. And someone else says, Pat Britton, it's not the job of the moral busybodies to regulate a free country. So this is the argument that supporters of National are now putting out there. So my response to that, or their response to that, is I think we should get a binding referendum started today on recreational cannabis use. Seems a lot of support out there today to allow people to do whatever they want with their bodies when it comes to smoking. We should ride this wave. And it's what we've just been saying in there. It's just absolutely, obviously a wave. And that flowed into.
So just slot something else into that guy's comments. Like,
yep.
What is it? The business of anybody that wants to do fucking black tar heroin.
Yep.
Users bring in this much. You know, it's the false equivalency.
Well, what it is whataboutism, and that's one of my tweets. Actually, I've never seen so much whataboutism as I'm seeing online with National voters trying to point away from Nicola Willis not commenting on if more smokers would lead to more deaths from smoking. Going to be outstanding few years of commentary. Yeah, it's like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? What about Jacinda? She did this. Well, what about, this? Well, what about that? It's going all the way through. Now, here's something else that's I think quite scary, right? This is for real, because I actually contacted Smokefree because we spoke to Ash, but I also contacted Smokefree because I was like, we could talk about this, right? It'd be great to get you guys on to have a chat about this. And this is what Smokefree said back to me, right? As Smokefree, as a part of Te Whatu Ora, it would be not appropriate for us to comment on incoming government's policy at this time. So what that means is the people within government who are charged with reducing smoking in the population are either doing it self-censoring, or basically going, we are not allowed to, as a government entity, comment on this. So the people who are most at risk and affected by this are the ones who are trying to educate the country about this, now won't comment on this because of the new government. That feels terrifying to me.
Yeah.
So that's what they came back to me and said. I think you just got rid of a super chat there, by the way, bro. I'm just putting it back in.
Oh, did I?
That's all right. I'm just putting it back in. I'm putting it back in the list.
Okay. Yeah. It's just such a dumb policy, and they've been caught on it so easily, and then they haven't been able to defend it at all in a convincing way. And then it's just the usual cheerleaders online that are trying to do their work for them for free. It's just so sad.
Zoo, who sent us a super chat, think of that, it makes a brilliant point here. It's kind of what we're saying, but it's always lovely when me and Chewy go on and on and on and on and on. You guys just put it in there so succinctly. Zoo for the $10 super chat. Thank you for your super chat. We appreciate it. The contrast between this government, who are willing to let 8,000 people die by 2040, and the Labour government, who are willing to shut down the entire country to save lives, is night and day.
Yep.
I mean, one of Labour's legacies, and it pisses me off they didn't push this more, is research that shows, because of how they handled COVID, there's 20,000 more New Zealanders here today than there would have been. So Labour's column is at least plus 20,000. National starts with a column of minus 8,000.
Sorry, Pat, you're coming at that wrong. You've described them as people and not profit-generating units.
What did our guest
remember that's ACT's thing at the moment, right? They're looking at Pharmac and saying that medicines should be funded on the basis of productivity. Like the commentator before that described them as ghoulish is just it's absolutely true. You can have government funded medicine if you're going to deliver profits and dividends to shareholders, rather than if you're not going to work, then why should we give you medicine?
And
that's
saying
fucking grim.
And saying that, we won't do Ben tonight, Ben Youdan, but I will play this one minute clip that I took today, just so you can see what he had to say and the phrase he used. Have a listen.
The other thing that she said that was very concerning was to suggest that removing this meant that they would protect tobacco tax revenue for slightly longer. They'll be able to afford other tax cuts. So essentially, 50% of the tobacco tax in New Zealand is paid by the poorest 20% of the population. And that's also the part of the population which has the majority, almost 3 or 4 times the number of lung cancer deaths than the richest, which is all smoking. And so it's essentially, it really, really concerns me that it's not even a sin tax, kind of taxing people who are addicted in the lowest income New Zealand and are facing deaths from tobacco is being seen as a legitimate and potentially expendable source of revenue. And I think that is probably what the most worrying thing I heard from her comments was.
So
that's so grim.
An expendable source of revenue. It's literally like the story to the Matrix. Those pods that were used as batteries, they literally lived off those batteries, and that they use human beings as battery pods. It's an expendable a form of revenue for this government. More people are going to die, but they're going to get more tax take. Now, look, I should be fair and say all governments will do that on some stage, but these guys have actively gone from 8,000 fewer deaths to implementing it. So it's not just like, you could argue that any government that takes tax from smokers could do that, but we're in a country that had world-leading policy out there that other countries look to with envy as a way to reduce smoking in this country exponentially. So it's not parallel to say, well, they get tax for cigarettes in Australia. It's different here because we had a plan to reduce that, and these guys have just gone, fuck it, 8,000 people dead, money please. So that's the difference, Chewy.
Yeah, and another aspect, just dovetailing off what was said there, those poorer people, those communities that have higher levels of smoking, we also had the evidence in the studies that have been done that they generally get poorer outcomes through our health system, which we were looking to resolve, but that's been shit canned as well. So it's every single one of these policies dovetails into the other one. And how many of them do you have to link up together like some sort of policy human centipede fucking thing that's pointed at one particular part of our population? And we go, the government has decided that you are expendable, that you are the problem that is not worth fixing.
Right.
It's fucking grim, and it just keeps coming.
I'm going to move on to the next sort of topic. It's kind of the sort of topic, but first, Alex says, National knows full well cannabis prohibition does not work. In fact, I know a lot of people who have issues such as cancer and autism and even use cannabis oil. Cannabis oil should not be in the MODA 1975. Yeah, look, I think that there's a lot of research around the world saying the benefits of cannabis for some people. I used to take THC oil for my back. It's better for acute rather than chronic issues, or the other way around. Which is the one that's long lasting? That's chronic,
Chronic.
And
yeah.
So it's better for acute than chronic issues. But there's lots of evidence around the world that THC or cannabis or however you're using it can be very good and very helpful in some areas. And look, I kind of think if you're at the end of your life, you've got cancer and you've got weeks to live, just fucking shoot anything up to make yourself feel better. What do you care? Why does the government get involved in that at all? I reckon you should go for it. So thank you for the $11 super chat. That's a nice, interesting number. Do I hit 12? Do I hit 12? Do I hit 12? 13 in the corner of the back row. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to go to the conversation around the treaty referendum, but as a part of the conversation with incoming regulation, that just, I shudder down my spine when I think about him being a regulation minister. Basically his job to cut regulation. So hello, leaky house syndrome coming back again. They did ask him about the same thing, about the that's a good freeze frame actually, because he was going to sleep his way through this fucking 3 years. They did ask him about the tax cuts for smoking, and it's only 60 seconds, so I'm going to play you the clip around the Waitangi issue or the treaty issues, but let's have a listen to what he had to say about continuing people smoking so they can give tax cuts.
And I just want to pick up on something that Nicola Willis said there, which is that smokers are going to pay for our tax cuts, or at least part of them now. She seemed to put that onto you, the Party and New Zealand First.
Well, first of all, I think it's worth acknowledging that the current government's trajectory is effectively to force tobacco underground. You're going to have a limited number of places where people can buy tobacco. You're going to ban cigarettes with a lot of nicotine in them. And I suspect that will take it to about the same place that the cannabis market is at.
Now, there's another point I want to make here. It's really, really important. And I'll play you another clip later on. But just notice what his evidence for the black market is. He says, I suspect, I feel, I think, I'm guessing, right? So he's guessing. This is a guess from a person who thinks it's where it's going to go. No evidence, really important, because later on he talks about how important evidence is. So, but I want you to see and remember, he says, I suspect. No evidence, no backing, no research. It's his guess. His gut tells him.
You're going to ban cigarettes with a lot of nicotine in them. And I suspect that that will take it to about the same place that the cannabis market is at, that you've got a lot of gangs making a lot of money selling it underground. What is now going to happen is that all those dairy owners, it's part of their revenue, all of those people who are law-abiding and don't break any other rules can continue to buy, and the government can continue to tax it. And I think that's a more realistic solution than what the previous government was headed towards.
So I'll play this before we get into the Waitangi thing, because when it came to tax cuts and when it came to issues around tax, he's very keen. He's very keen to make sure they make decisions based on evidence. So I'm going to play this for you again. This is on my Twitter feed right now, and I'll play the first clip, which he suspects, and then I'll go into the second clip from the same interview as to how he's approaching other policy.
Well, first of all, I think it's worth acknowledging that the current government's trajectory is effectively to force tobacco underground. You're going to have a limited number of places where people can buy tobacco. You're going to ban cigarettes with a lot of nicotine in them. And I suspect that that will take it to about the same place that the cannabis market is at, that you've got a lot of gangs making a lot of money selling it underground.
Right, I suspect. So he's making policy on suspicions, guessing, feelings, as Chewy would say a lot before the election, the vibes. But when it comes to tax breaks, how do they make policy?
I think it's a very good example of how we commit to work together, be evidence-based, find the best policy.
Oh, hang on. You need to be evidence-based. Hang on, they're feeling different.
This is very confusing.
It's very confusing because the first one was the vibes is how you make policy, but now it appears you're saying you need to be evidence-based.
Work together, be evidence-based, find the best policies for New Zealand with everyone bringing something to the table.
So, Rimmer, what does evidence say about smoking and continuing it on? Well, what the evidence says is 8,000 more dead New Zealanders by 2014, but you suspect it might do a bit of a black market. So that's confusing to me, Chewy, because it sounds like he's picking and choosing whether he goes with the vibe or the evidence based on his internal narrative. I'm confused by that. So you got any thoughts?
It's almost like the man has no personal fucking integrity.
Yeah.
Look, it's really hard to maintain a coherent position on that sort of stuff when you look at your donation list. And you go, that's right, those guys bought something. Fuck. Oh well, never mind. Remember, cannabis equals gang member. Cannabis equals dirty hippie. No one likes dirty hippies.
Yeah.
Cigarette, cool guy. Action hero, Bruce Willis.
Fonzie.
Mad Men. Fonzie.
Yep.
Cool.
Hey.
Freedom, cowboy, no bad connotations at all. It's these guys. I would love to hang around Parliament and see who goes for a smoke break.
Well, have you noticed over the weekend there's been pictures of Winston Peters smoking all over media? Of course he has.
Yeah, because the man can't die. His lungs are made of horse leather that he got from the racing industry. He is unkillable. We had a chance, and then, like a vampire, Luxon invited him back into the house, and now you can't get rid of him.
It's very true, because if you're a vampire to come to the house, you have to be invited. It's very, very true. JK on the super chat, thank you for the $10, JK. Appreciate that. Just for a few thousand deaths, your landlord can get a tax break.
That's a good vibe. For those renters out there, I hope you're counting the days for the rent reductions.
Yeah,
to kick in, right? Because that's going to happen.
Downward pressure. We're being told downward pressure.
Don't worry about it.
But remember, Luxon wouldn't commit to his rental properties dropping their prices, but downward pressure is coming because of these. And landlords are going to be happier, and so are the renters. We're being told. Why would the renter be happier? The landlord makes more money off depreciation and being able to claim some of that those interest payments back. How's that going to make the tenant? You really think they're going to pass it on? Oh, that's right, like they do all the time, and pass on those savings. So thank you for the super chat, JK. We appreciate it. Right, let's get into the other part of this conversation with Rimmer, talking about the referendum that he didn't get, that he thinks this is a good thing for New Zealand. It's not going to be divisive, and it's actually going to create a harmonious New Zealand, because all of a sudden your racist Uncle Bob and Nelson is going to be able to have his say on what he think the principles of the treaty is about, because that's what it comes down to. He talks about the courts have had their say, the Waitangi Tribunal has had its say, the public service has had its say about defining the treaty principles. But what fucking Rimmer wants is racist Uncle Bob from Nelson, sorry Nelson, no offense, to be able to have his say. That's what he wants, because that's actually the person who's most informed. Waitangi Tribunal, obviously no shit. The courts, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. But dirty old Uncle Rick, who puts all those memes up about, the trans agenda on his Facebook page, he's got to have his say, because he's the voice we're waiting to hear from, Chewy, to get all this racial division sorted out.
Democracy manifest.
Let's have a look.
The treaty principles, you didn't get the referendum, but you did get this treaty principles bill to be introduced and supported to select committee. What is the point of that? Because the other parties have said outrightly, not going to happen, the referendum.
Well, the Treaty Principles Act is actually the piece of law that would be confirmed by referendum if it goes all the way through the 3 readings. So the other parties were a bit sceptical about that, and we said, okay, well, let's just get it through the first step, draft the bill, debate it, send it to a select committee, allow people to have a say about our treaty principles. And I suspect that people actually are going to really welcome that conversation, that it's going to be a positive thing. That
people are going to welcome it, and it's going to be positive. I've just been hearing.
We're all going to be holding hands in the street, Pat. It's going to be fucking lit.
All that commentary from Māori elders and stuff around the country over the last few days have all been saying that. Oh, hang on, no, they've been saying the opposite. But Rimmer knows, and racist Uncle Bob, they know. It's going to be kumbaya, peace, love, and mung beans for everybody.
The people who are out there saying this is all terrible and you're not allowed to have that debate, say, hang on a minute. Debating the principles of the treaty actually increases the mana of the treaty, because we're finally talking about it democratically. We haven't done that. It's all been decided in back rooms in the courts, the Waitangi Tribunal, and the public service.
Yeah.
It does depend how it's debated.
I mean, what the fuck does the Waitangi Tribunal know, Chewy? I mean, about Māoridom and the treaty, what would they know? I mean, racist Uncle Bob, he knows a thing or two. Waitangi Tribunal, what do those dicks know?
The nature of that
I
debate.
Agree. And I just suspect that after we go through that process, the other parties might just change their mind and decide it's a good thing they want, or they might not. But we've secured to get it that far, and I think that is tremendous progress after 40 years of Parliament saying there are principles, but refusing to say what they are.
Ever the optimist. But, Christopher Luxon was saying as recently as yesterday, absolutely not, that, they would support it through that first bill stage, but that they wouldn't absolutely not support it beyond that. So what is, I suppose, you've criticised the current government.
He hasn't said that.
He said it on News Talk ZB.
There's been some confusion. He was asked if they had any commitment to do it, to support it beyond that.
So you think the door is open?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because the government, you've criticised the Labor government for sort of its pet projects and, spending a lot of time and energy on them. This does seem like the same thing. If it's not going to go anywhere.
It's an absolutely critical debate about what our founding document means to us in modern times. That has to happen. 2 years ago when we raised the prospect, nobody supported the idea of a referendum. Now it's a live debate that is going to get at least some way through the parliamentary process and potentially further. The idea that having a proper understanding of what our founding document really means, decided by all people, is, as you say, a pet project. I think that's probably a poor choice of words.
Now this is the other thing, a proper understanding of what our founding document means according to all people. Like racist Uncle Bob, look, respectfully, me, Chewy, I'm not the fucking person to figure that out. But this is the virtue signaling. This is the, his funders and his supporters and his voters want this. He is suggesting that democracy means the people of New Zealand can decide what this founding document means. Now, in one way, that's basically saying we can make it mean whatever we want. Then what? Like, hang on, academics, historians, experts, Waitangi Tribunal, courts, people who work in this world. Like, could you imagine going to the mechanic, Stewie, right? And rather than listening to the mechanic, this is what's wrong with the engine, going, well, hang on, I want to ask all the people on the forecourt if they know. Because if we do this democratically, then we'll get to the answer as to what's wrong with my car. No. You go to the expert, you go to the mechanic, you don't go, well, you don't know anything. I'm gonna ask those 3 ladies over there filling up their cars. They're gonna know something. It's just lunacy.
Like, on one hand, I'm glad that it's a bill. It's got to pass. There's no fucking way it's going to pass. Like, that is my shred of hope there. The thing that is going to do the damage here is just the discussion of it, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's like you can't turn around to an entire country with a European descent majority, and just people will think it's a good discussion. No, they're not. They're going to come at it from a position of absolute fucking ignorance, because that's what there has been around any discussion of the treaty for as long as I've been alive.
Yeah. Like,
if Māori get anything, then they're greedy. Like, I have a really clear memory of the Ngāi Tahu settlement. And one of the things that the Ngāi Tahu were asking, which really got people up in arms in Timaru, I tell you what, the letters that went to the Timaru Herald that I remember, whoa, people were hot. Can you believe that the South Island tribe were asking for Mount Cook? They were asking for a mountain that was named after the greatest Royal Navy middle manager that's ever been. And they were just going to take it. And then we weren't going to be able to look at the mountain, I assume.
They'd probably move it to their backyard.
Do you know what the Ngāi Tahu did?
What's
Those
that?
greedy pricks. They added another name. Now it's Aoraki Mount Cook, which is, of course, it's like I've broken out in a migraine even trying to keep those 2 names in my head at the same time. And then the pricks donated it back to all the people of New Zealand.
There's got to be a catch.
Those
There's got to be a catch.
Bastards.
Now,
you've
led us into our next topic.
We want to put it out to a referendum. Oh, because suddenly everybody in New Zealand is a bona fide treaty settlement expert.
Yeah.
Get fucked.
You've led us into our last topic quite nicely, which is, should we say the Māori word first or second? The big important things that are going to get our country back on track, apparently. Thanks to Cookie Nit for the $2 super chat. Hit that like, everybody. Every click helps. And then also to Daniel. Daniel, thanks for the $9 super chat, $8.99. The New Zealand legislative framework is based on interpretation called case law. It's a move to get ACT what they want, has nothing to do with all New Zealanders. Very fair. And just not just ACT, but ACT's voters. And I think more importantly, we heard this several times in the pre-election rambles, ACT supporters, the people who financially backed ACT, is to get them what they want as well. So last story from today is actually about the induction of our new government. Let's just have a look at it, because as you will be aware, Chewy, you've just led into the conversation around, the use of Māori and that kind of stuff. There was quite a lot of it today, so I'm not sure how they kind of managed to stand there the whole time when Māori words were coming out. Like for example, they sung the national anthem in Māori. Now, I don't know why they did this. Surely they should have sung it in English first, prominent, and then Māori. But they did it in Māori first, so there's something going on I can't quite figure out. But let's have a look at the story from today.
New Zealand, welcome your new government. Belting out the anthem. And one by one, taking the oath of allegiance.
I, Winston Raymond Peters, swear that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance to His Majesty.
This is the bit, the hairless bit. You've got to listen to this, and all his hairs.
King Charles III,
his heirs and successors according to law, so help me God.
Aotearoa's native tongue weaved throughout the ceremony. But with a new administration comes a change of direction and a backward step in terms of te reo Māori.
Te reo is fantastic. We want to encourage people to use more te reo across. But what we're saying...
We want to encourage more people to use te reo Māori by removing it as much as we can from public life. But, you know, it's like that whole thing about, you know, like women's rugby, for example, how when they got all that exposure around the Women's Rugby World Cup, what they're saying is it's like Sky TV going, we're not going to show women's rugby at all anymore, but we're really going to support to see if we can get growth in women's rugby.
This is a fucking theme of his this week. So we want people to use te reo more, but we're not going to do anything to encourage it. We definitely want to hit our carbon targets, and we don't want to add to greenhouse gases, but we are going to open up oil and gas exploration again. We don't want smoking to continue, and we want it to go down on the trajectory that it's on, but we're not going to help that either. Luxon wants it both ways every time. Every fucking time. He doesn't want to change anything, but he does want the good outcome. He's a fucking dreamer.
It's almost like he's full of shit. Should we keep going? Let's keep going.
Yes.
Saying very clearly with respect to government departments is we want everybody to navigate their government.
Despite both National and ACT voting for the 2016 Māori Language Bill, which stated the Māori language should be used in the promotion of government services, the Coalition is set to order all public service departments to change their names to English and communicate in English.
What was that whole thing about wasting, the last government being wasteful on road signs and changing them? This government comes in, one of the first things they do is asking all the government departments to change their names. Isn't that kind of wasteful spending with all the signs and that kind of stuff having to be changed? Or am I missing something, Joey?
It's been done. Just like everybody's freaking out, like they put a dollar value on it, like they're going to do a rebrand every now and then anyway, and just next time have some more Māori in it. And it's like this with the street sign. Street signs get old and need replacing. So you just make it a thing like, oh, does the name have a macron on it that it's supposed to have? Can we get a bilingual sign in there? It's not like the government is going, well, we've got to spend fucking $25 billion to replace all the signs in the next 6 months.
All right. So apparently we've just heard from Jenna that they're going to be replacing all the signs, etc. Here we go.
English too.
How quickly do you want the government departments to start using basically English only or English first?
We'll work that through. We've got our first cabinet meeting tomorrow. We've got a second cabinet meeting on Wednesday. Our focus for this week is actually to prepare our 100-day plan of action.
The incoming government, which campaigned on cutting government waste, has no idea of the cost.
Look, I don't have costings on that right now, but that's a government policy that'll be worked through in the country.
You know also how big their cabinet is? Bigger than the last government. But, you know, smaller government, smaller public service.
Coming weeks, I suspect.
It's also unclear how far the remit stretches.
I'll continue to use Kia ora on a daily basis.
Whether it's just agencies like Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand and the Transport Agency, Waka Kotahi, or Crown entities like our National Museum, Te Papa, for instance.
There you go.
You're going to rename Te Papa?
No, what we've said is, look, just where there is Māori-facing agencies, they should stay in te reo.
So you could change the name of Te Papa?
We'll work that out in government as to what we're going to do.
Well, the difference between that and Waka Kotahi, tell me this, how many boats have you ever seen going down the road? How many boats have you ever seen going on the road anywhere in the world?
The sense of the occasion.
You know, it's very easy if you Google on YouTube, like boats on trailers. I actually see quite a lot of boats going down roads. You know, I used to own a trailer sailor, and we put it on the tow bar and put it. So actually, technically, I've seen lots of boats going down the road. Winston, you fuck knuckle.
Perhaps lost on Winston Peters, who minutes after swearing to be a true and faithful Deputy Prime Minister launched straight back to form.
First 5 questions.
Turning our question about his te reo policy into a direction to the state-owned broadcasters TVNZ and RNZ.
How quickly do you expect government departments and government agencies to act in removing te reo Māori?
With TVNZ and RNZ which a taxpayer owns, understand this new message. We'll see whether these people, with the media and journalists, are they independent? Well, isn't that fascinating? I've never seen evidence of that the last 3 years.
Outlandishly and incorrectly claiming the government had, quote, bribed the media through the Public Interest Journalism Fund.
You can't defend $55 million of bribery.
Repeating for effect.
No, you cannot defend $55 million of bribery. Get it very...
He obviously doesn't know, or he does. And as you say, speaking to the cookers, I've told you guys this who weren't aware. We're here in New Zealand on their funding. They fund projects. So, for example, Jack Tame's program, Q&A, has NZ on their funding. 6 o'clock news doesn't have any. Any of those specials before the election that we got booted off YouTube for, one of the reasons TVNZ wanted to enforce that, whether they were right or they were wrong, is they have to pay for that themselves through advertising. So I just need everybody to know, RNZ, different story, because they're ad-free, they're completely public, completely. TVNZ, not the case. NZ on air funds projects, and One News is not considered a project. So it's not, they don't actually fund very much of TVNZ News when it comes to their news content. But Chewy, I think you're right. And this is where I think if he keeps this up, remember we had that conversation about Plunkett. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention. I'll only say his name twice because if it's 3 times, he'll turn up behind you. And how at the start of him trying to build that, piles of diarrhea that he calls a platform, he really went to the cookers. He went to them, and we had the conversation that his dilemma was going to be, because that's not his beliefs. Does he stay pitching to them, which was an audience that was growing, or does he risk going back to where he actually truly thinks and believes? He'll lose them, and then he may have no one. He made a choice and a decision to go back there upon direction from the Right Family Foundation, to be clear. But since then, he's been slowly drifting back. Now, I actually think, and I wonder if what will happen with Winston Peters is he'll have to have that same decision as well. Because if he keeps pitching this stuff to the cookers like that, there will be people who like Winston, who are fans of Winston, who will get sick of it and who won't buy it. That will be a percentage of his voting base. And so he'll either have to choose at some stage to go full on in that area of dis and misinformation, or he'll have to move away from it, go back to where his natural roots would be, which are the Blue Rinse Brigade, and then he'll lose the cookers. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think that I get the sense that him keeping on doing this kind of stuff will cost him more than it will gain him when it comes to votes and support in the next election. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Like I was prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt that once they got him there, he would lose them for fucking dust. And he's still talking to them. So, if he's talking about the journalism fund, which is their catch cry that was just bribes for media and that sort of thing, it's blatantly false. The man's got a brain in his head, I assume, unless it's withered and died. He knows the reasons for it. He must do.
Yeah. Yep, of course he does.
News is not profitable. So if we want to continue getting news out of our public broadcasters, then something needs to be done. Otherwise, we will just have The Bachelor on loop.
A lot of that public interest journalism fund went to places and people that would have lost their jobs through COVID if it hadn't been for the fund. So like rural places got quite a bit of money, maybe not per capita, but a good percentage of it went into rural places up in Wanaka, down here in Otago, in Queenstown, places on the West Coast. ODT probably access, and I'm not sure about that, but it wasn't just like this is all going to TVNZ so they can sell Labour's narrative. And just so I don't want to have this conversation because I kind of don't want to defend for them, but this is how anything with NZ on air goes, right? This is how the funding goes. You tell the funding agency what you're going to do. They fund it, you do it. At no point does the funder go, we want you to do this. You submit a proposal that says, this is our project. They either support it or not, and then you do your project. That's how the funding model works. So it's just all horseshit. It's all horseshit. And that's one of the places that people are like, I can't say his name again because it might bring him up in the rear, actually spin. I mean, remember that man, that pile of pancake batter, remember he got profile because of public funding on Fair Go and on RNZ. And he's still living off that profile today, pulling up the ladder and not wanting anyone else or questioning anyone else who might have access to public funding. It's just all a shell game. It's all a shell game. All right, let's get to the end of this because I want to go to bed.
Clear.
His new boss, completely unawares of his 2IC's antics, just stoked to be part of the occasion.
Every minister understands the responsibility that they have.
The responsibility of running a country.
Kia ora, Jenna. Well, sworn in. What's the rest of the week's agenda like?
So the Cabinet will get their first spin in the Cabinet chairs tomorrow, but that will be more of a photo opportunity along with signing off the rules of Cabinet. The first proper meeting won't happen until Wednesday, and then the House is not expected to sit until next week. So there's a bit more pomp and pageantry to get through before this lot can actually get down to business. But this is now the second major ceremonial moment of Christopher Luxon's Prime Ministership that has been overshadowed by his first chosen Deputy Prime Minister, Winston Peters' anti-media antics. Ministers in the past have faced weeks of pressure for any perception that they may be trying to exert influence over our state broadcasters, and rightly so. Their editorial independence is sacred. It may have been okay for Winston Peters to have a lash at media on the election campaign, but this is something different. He is the Deputy Prime Minister, and this is about democracy. It is also unbecoming of a Deputy Prime Minister to falsely accuse the media of taking bribes from a government, and you can bet your bottom dollar that this particular Deputy Prime Minister and serial litigant Winston Peters would at least threaten to haul someone through the courts if the same baseless accusation was levelled at him.
And that's an interesting thing coming from Jenna Lynch from the commercial wing of Discovery New Zealand. Basically, you can see when Three or an American station, now Discovery New Zealand, is basically saying, shut the fuck up about TVNZ, you know someone stepped over a line, Joey.
I wonder what would happen if the media just boycotted Winston. Like, just don't go to his stand-ups. Don't wait for him at an airport. Don't fucking engage in his circus. I wonder if it would turn for him at that point, that he goes, oh, actually, I do want people to listen to me, and there is a reason.
I don't think that matters.
Will he just go, fantastic, the shadows, no one's paying attention.
I don't think it would matter for about 2 years and 2 months. And then for the last 10 months of this term, it would matter again. Anyway, but it's interesting. Look, let me just say this. A huge thanks to Rodney. A huge thanks to Brendan, to Keith, to Kiwi Skirt, to Stephen. I think that's it from tonight. If I missed you, I'm sorry. All who bought some merch tonight. We really appreciate that, guys. I want to say this one more time. This is likely the last week. I'm actually pretty sure we're not going to do it next week. So don't risk my feeble mind that I'm going to come back next week, because I really want you guys to have the stuff by Christmas. But the BHN gear, this is your last week to get it with the OB on the back. Now, if you're not sure what that is, it's like, who cares? We just want to have, that just is a way that you can kind of put on blast that you were here from day one. Well, it's not day one, but the first year we did gear. So the BHN OB gear, it is the last chance for you to get it ever. There'll be more BHN gear next year. There are hoodies and t-shirts for our 3 t-shirts. We've never had 3 in a week. We thought, what the heck? Let's have a bit of fun this week. For those with power, equality feels like oppression, and that's available in purple and in tan. Have yourself a very beardy Christmas. That's available only in red with white print. Have yourself a very beardy Christmas. And then, of course, Chewy's favorite, the #1 podcast in Swaziland.
Objectively, that's the best t-shirt. It's such an in-joke, but also true.
And listen, I apologize about the image coming soon. That's because it was my mistake. I forgot to tell the printer we're going to have them in hoodies and t-shirts. So he's going to send me some hoodie images tomorrow, but they're just going to look. I mean, you can actually have a look at the hoodies, the actual hoodies. There's one right there, but there'll be a graphic like this tomorrow, so you'll get a bit of a better look at it. BHNshop.nz, certainly Monday to Thursday this week. We'll probably cut it off 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on Friday morning so I can get it off to the printer, so we can get your stuff out and make sure you have it before Christmas Day. BHNshop.nz. All right, Joey, that's me. Got anything else?
No, I am tangent free at this point. I've got all of my angry out for today. Today only.
And remember,
I'll have more angry tomorrow.
tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, we do have Ben Youdan joining us. I've already had that conversation today, but I knew today was going to go long. Ben Youdan is the director of ASH New Zealand, and we'll have his commentary on what he thinks, what ASH thinks against smoking for health, something like that. What he thinks about the changes that National are doing to Smokefree 2025. And yeah, if Nicola Willis refuses to ask a question, will more people die from this? Let's see what Ash has got to say tomorrow night.
I tell you what, it's up to all New Zealanders to smoke our way out of this recession.
All right, guys, you're beautiful. I love you to bits, and we will see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of A Big Hairy News. Remember, bring a friend tomorrow night. Oh, also, I've probably lost everybody. Everyone's gone, haven't they? Remember as well to go and vote for us at the Podcast Awards, nzpodcastaward.com. Haven't mentioned that tonight. Listeners' choice.
Still going on? I thought it was
it's up. Well, they announce it on Thursday, so you can probably still get your nominations in nzpodcastaward.com. Go and do it now and get your flatmate to do it with you, and we will see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo.